Most Americans think they're free. But here's the uncomfortable question. If you were being controlled, would you even notice it? Because the most powerful systems don't use force. They use comfort, convenience, and habits you stop questioning. And if you live in the US, at least one of these systems shapes your life every single day. Not politically, not emotionally, just practically. And once you see how it works, you won't be able to unsee it. Most Americans believe they're free. Free to speak, free to move, free to choose. And in many ways, that's true. But freedom doesn't mean the absence of control. It means the control is quiet, invisible, and often voluntary. Today, we're breaking down the major ways the US government has power over your daily life. Not to scare you, not to blame anyone, just to understand how the system actually works. No conspiracies, no fear-mongering, just reality, explained clearly. And we're going to start with the most basic form of power: money. Financial power. The strongest form of control isn't force, it's dependency. And the scary part is, most people don't even notice when it happens. In the US, nearly every part of life depends on money. Housing, healthcare, education, transportation. You don't need to tell people what to do when their survival already depends on a system they can't step outside of. Money is shaped in three main ways: taxes, inflation, and interest rates. Taxes decide how much of your work you keep. Inflation decides how much your money is worth tomorrow. And interest rates decide how expensive your future becomes. When those three move, behavior follows. Not because people are weak, but because bills don't care about opinions. Legal power. The US has thousands of laws. So many, in fact, that most people break at least one every year without realizing it. Traffic rules, zoning laws, paperwork mistakes, outdated regulations. The real power isn't in knowing every law, it's in selective enforcement. Because when laws are too many to follow perfectly, enforcement becomes a choice. And when enforcement becomes a choice, discretion becomes power. Most people don't feel controlled by laws until the day one of them is suddenly enforced. Surveillance and data. Now think about how much of your life happens through a screen. Your phone, your apps, your accounts. Most surveillance today doesn't feel like surveillance. It feels like convenience, cameras for safety, data for efficiency, tracking for personalization. Your phone knows where you go, what you search, who you talk to, when you sleep, not because you're dangerous, because it's easy. And once that information exists, it doesn't really disappear. It can always be used, even if that wasn't the original intention. Control doesn't always watch people. Sometimes it just remembers them. Information power. And what gets remembered often shapes what gets shown. People believe what they see repeatedly, not because they're stupid, because the human brain is efficient. What shows up in your feed starts to feel like reality. What doesn't show up slowly feels like it doesn't exist. Governments don't need to censor everything. They only need to shape attention. When information is filtered, framed, or amplified selectively, belief follows. And when you control the narrative, force becomes unnecessary. Fear and emergencies. But there's one shortcut that works even faster than information. Fear. Not panic, fear. The quiet kind that sits in the background and changes what feels acceptable. Fear makes people accept rules they would normally question. During emergencies, people trade freedom for safety, willingly. Temporary rules often feel reasonable in the moment. The problem is that temporary power has a habit of staying longer than promised. Not because someone planned it that way, but because systems rarely give power back once people get used to living without it. Fear doesn't remove freedom, it convinces people to hand it over. Time and bureaucracy. And then there's one form of control almost everyone experiences, but almost no one talks about: time, waiting, paperwork, forms, delays. Bureaucracy doesn't argue with people, it exhausts them, until compliance feels easier than resistance. Power doesn't always say no, Sometimes it just says, come back later. None of this means the system is evil. Power exists in every organized society. The difference is whether people understand how it works or only notice it when it's already affecting their life. Because power works best when people don't notice it at all. Awareness doesn't make you powerless. It gives you options. The real question isn't, is the system controlling? It's, how aware are you of it? Which one affects your life the most? Most people don't agree, and that's where the real conversation begins.